Nathan Brooks had never imagined his life would shrink into a tiny apartment with peeling paint, unpaid bills stacked on the kitchen counter, and a 6-year-old daughter who smiled despite having almost nothing. 3 years earlier, his wife had died from an unexpected illness, leaving him alone to raise little Lily while juggling shifts as a freelance emergency medical technician. Every sunrise meant another battle against overdue rent, school expenses, and exhaustion. Yet every evening ended the same way. Lily would wrap her tiny arms around his neck and remind him that home was wherever they stayed together. That simple truth kept Nathan alive. The emergency call that changed everything came just before midnight. A private hospital urgently needed an experienced medic to assist with a specialized patient transfer after a senior nurse suffered an injury. Nathan accepted immediately. The extra payment meant groceries for another week. He expected another wealthy patient surrounded by demanding relatives and expensive lawyers. Instead, he found silence. Victoria Langford, the brilliant CEO of a global technology company, sat alone beside a rain-covered window. At only 34 years old, she had already built an empire worth billions before a devastating helicopter crash left her paralyzed from the waist down. Her fiancé had quietly disappeared within months. Business partners had begun questioning her leadership. Friends stopped visiting. Newspapers celebrated her past success while gossip websites predicted the collapse of her company. Every visitor entered her room looking at the wheelchair before looking into her eyes. Nathan did something different. He greeted her exactly the way he greeted every patient, with respect instead of pity. That tiny difference unsettled Victoria more than sympathy ever had. As he checked her medical equipment and reviewed transport instructions, he noticed framed photographs turned face down on a nearby shelf. Fresh flowers had already begun to wilt. The room looked less like a recovery suite and more like a waiting room between hope and goodbye. During the quiet transfer preparations, Victoria suddenly asked him a question no medical professional expected. She wanted to know whether people ever truly recovered after losing everything. Nathan paused. He could have answered with medical statistics. Instead, he remembered standing beside his wife's hospital bed while doctors quietly admitted there was nothing more they could do. He remembered carrying Lily home afterward, unable to explain why Mommy would never open the front door again. He simply replied that recovery rarely meant getting back the life someone lost. Sometimes it meant discovering a life they never imagined was still waiting. Victoria looked away, pretending not to care. Yet those words remained inside her. The transfer finished without incident. Nathan assumed he would never see her again. Life had different plans. That night, Nathan returned to his apartment and found Lily sleeping peacefully, clutching a worn teddy bear that had seen better days. He kissed her forehead and wondered how long he could keep pretending everything would be okay. The eviction notice tucked beneath yesterday's mail reminded him that hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. But somewhere in that sterile hospital room, a seed had been planted. Neither of them knew it yet, but two broken lives were about to collide in ways neither could have predicted. 2 weeks after the midnight transfer, Nathan's world nearly collapsed. Lily developed a dangerous allergic reaction while Nathan was working another emergency shift. Panicked neighbors rushed her to the very same private hospital. Nathan arrived breathless, terrified he might lose the only family he had left. His heart pounded as doctors rushed Lily into emergency treatment. He paced the hallway, replaying every moment of his wife's final days. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making everything feel surreal and distant. After hours of treatment, Lily stabilized. Nathan collapsed into a chair, exhausted beyond words. His daughter would survive, but the emotional toll had drained everything from him. He wandered into the hospital chapel to collect himself. The small room smelled of old wood and candle wax. Stained glass windows cast colorful patterns across empty pews. There, unexpectedly, sat Victoria. She recognized him instantly. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Sometimes broken people recognize one another without needing explanations. Victoria broke the silence first. She asked about the little girl he had mentioned during their first meeting. Nathan's voice cracked as he explained what had happened. He spoke about his fear, his helplessness, and the crushing weight of being the only parent Lily had left. He talked about his late wife and how every medical emergency reopened wounds that had never fully healed. Victoria listened without interrupting. She didn't offer empty platitudes or pretend to understand his pain. She simply sat there, present and human. That night, something shifted between them. They weren't medic and patient anymore. They were two people who had been shattered by life, trying to find pieces of themselves in the darkness. Nathan admitted he had been surviving, not living. He went through the motions for Lily, but inside, he had stopped believing in anything beyond the next paycheck and the next meal. Victoria confessed she had been counting down days until she could stop counting at all. They left the chapel separately, but they carried something new with them. Nathan had found someone who understood that grief wasn't something you got over, it was something you learned to carry. Victoria had found someone who looked at her like she was still a person, not a cautionary tale. The universe works in mysterious ways. Sometimes it places strangers in our path not by accident, but because they carry exactly what we need to heal. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed repeatedly. Nathan visited the hospital because Lily required follow-up appointments. Victoria continued intensive rehabilitation. Every meeting lasted only minutes. Yet every conversation became slightly longer. She slowly learned about Lily. Nathan slowly learned about the lonely woman hidden beneath magazine covers, calling her one of America's most powerful executives. Money had purchased private jets. It had never bought genuine friendship. Their connection deepened with each encounter. Nathan found himself looking forward to the hospital visits, not for Lily's appointments, but for the conversations that followed. Victoria noticed her therapists commenting on her improved mood and renewed determination. Neither of them admitted what was happening. But something was blooming in the space between their broken pieces. Something neither of them had expected or dared to name. One afternoon, Lily escaped Nathan's attention and wandered into the rehabilitation garden. The sun was warm against her skin as she explored the flowers and pathways. Victoria sat alone near the fountain, watching the world go by. She noticed the little girl approaching and felt her usual anxiety rise. Children could be cruel. They stared, they asked uncomfortable questions, and they often made her feel like a spectacle. But Lily was different. The little girl walked directly toward Victoria's wheelchair, completely unafraid. In her small hand, she carried a single yellow daisy she had picked from the garden. Adults always stared at the wheelchair first. Children simply asked honest questions. Lily looked directly into Victoria's eyes and smiled brightly. She said the flower looked lonely because nobody had picked it. She thought Victoria might be lonely too, so maybe the flower would keep her company. Victoria couldn't remember the last time someone had offered her something expecting absolutely nothing in return. Her throat tightened as she accepted the simple gift. She thanked Lily, who then asked if she could sit on Victoria's lap. The question caught her off guard. Most adults kept their distance, uncertain how to interact with someone in a wheelchair. But Lily saw nothing strange about the situation. To her, Victoria was just a new friend who happened to have wheels. Nathan arrived moments later, panicked and apologetic. But Victoria waved away his concerns. She was laughing. Actually laughing. The sound surprised everyone, including herself. Lily had asked about her chair, why she needed it, and whether it was fun to ride around. Victoria found herself explaining her injury in simple terms, and Lily accepted the explanation without judgment or pity. To a 6-year-old, a wheelchair was just another way of getting around. That evening, Victoria cried harder than she had since the accident. Not because she felt weak, but because someone had reminded her she was still human. Lily had treated her like a person, not a tragedy. In that moment, Victoria realized how far she had drifted from herself. The CEO who commanded boardrooms had become a woman who couldn't accept a flower from a child without breaking down. The transformation had been gradual, loss after loss, betrayal after betrayal. Until she had become someone she barely recognized. The daisy sat on her bedside table for days. Long after it wilted, Victoria refused to throw it away. It represented something precious, the realization that she still had value, still had purpose, still had the capacity to connect with others. Lily had given her more than a flower. She had given back a piece of Victoria's humanity. That night, Victoria made a decision. She would stop waiting to die. She would fight for her recovery, not because she wanted to walk again, but because she wanted to be worthy of that little girl's kindness. The path ahead would be long and painful. But for the first time in months, Victoria wanted to see where it led. Days turned into months. Nathan and Victoria's friendship deepened in ways neither had anticipated. They met weekly in the hospital garden, sometimes with Lily, sometimes alone. Nathan shared stories about his late wife, the challenges of single parenthood, and his fears about the future. Victoria opened up about her childhood, her relentless drive to succeed, and the emptiness that success had never filled. They found common ground in their grief and their determination to keep moving forward. Victoria desperately wanted to help Nathan. She noticed the worn edges of his clothes, the exhaustion in his eyes, and the way he sometimes went without meals so Lily could eat. She had more money than she could ever spend. It seemed absurd not to share it with someone who clearly needed it. She began leaving anonymous packages for Lily, new clothes, books, school supplies, and groceries. She thought she was being subtle, but Nathan recognized the signs. He returned every single package, unopened, with a note that always carried the same message: real friendship cannot be purchased. Victoria was frustrated at first. She didn't understand why he wouldn't accept her help. But Nathan explained his position clearly. He had spent years being judged by his poverty. He refused to let his friendship with Victoria become another transaction. If she wanted to be his friend, she needed to accept him exactly as he was. No charity. No special treatment. Just two people connecting as equals. That conversation changed everything. Victoria realized she had been viewing Nathan as a project, someone she could fix with money. But Nathan wasn't broken. He was surviving against impossible odds, holding onto his dignity with both hands. He didn't need her money. He needed her respect. And from that day forward, Victoria gave it freely. She stopped trying to solve his problems and started simply being present. That was the greatest gift she could offer. Meanwhile, Victoria's recovery accelerated. Her therapists noticed remarkable improvements in her strength and mood. Her doctors marveled at her determination. She attended board meetings again, surprising everyone with her insights and commitment. The wheelchair remained, but something inside her had quietly begun standing again. She developed new products aimed at accessibility technology, drawing on her own experiences. For the first time, she felt like she had purpose beyond profit. Nathan became her sounding board, offering honest opinions without sugarcoating. He challenged her assumptions and encouraged her when she doubted herself. Their conversations ranged from business strategy to parenting advice to philosophical debates about the meaning of life. They laughed together, sometimes cried together, and gradually built something neither had expected: a genuine partnership based on mutual respect. Victoria stopped thinking of Nathan as someone who needed saving. She started seeing him as someone who had already saved her. Without his friendship, she would have given up long ago. Without her friendship, he might have lost hope entirely. They were two halves of a whole, two broken people who made each other whole again. Then disaster struck. An investigative journalist published confidential documents revealing shareholders planned to remove Victoria as CEO, arguing her disability made her incapable of leading future expansion. Financial media exploded with speculation. Company stock began falling. Television analysts debated whether leadership required physical strength. Nobody discussed courage. Nobody mentioned the innovations she had pioneered or the lives she had touched. All they saw was the wheelchair. The emotional pressure became unbearable. Victoria isolated herself inside her hospital suite, refusing visitors, therapists, and even family members. She stopped eating properly. She stopped attending therapy sessions. She stopped answering calls from concerned employees who still believed in her. The woman who had fought so hard to rebuild herself was crumbling again. When Nathan arrived after receiving a worried call from one of her nurses, he found the room dark. Curtains closed. Flowers dead. Medical equipment unplugged except for essentials. Hope had vanished. She believed everyone would eventually leave anyway. She had been abandoned before by people who claimed to love her. Now the world was abandoning her too. Nathan quietly opened the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room. He didn't lecture her. He didn't promise miracles. Instead, he told her about Lily learning to ride a bicycle. She had fallen 23 times before balancing on her own. Every fall ended with tears. Every attempt began again. Nathan admitted something he had never shared. The hardest part wasn't watching Lily fall. It was resisting the urge to carry her forever. Because love sometimes means believing someone is stronger than they believe themselves to be. Those words shattered the walls Victoria had spent months building around her heart. She looked at Nathan through tear-filled eyes and asked why he cared. She had nothing to offer him. She was damaged, broken, and increasingly worthless. Nathan took her hand and told her something she would never forget. He said she wasn't broken. She was just learning to ride a new bicycle. And he would be there to help her get back up every time she fell. Victoria sobbed openly. All the pain, all the fear, all the humiliation poured out of her. Nathan held her hand and let her cry. He didn't try to fix anything. He simply stayed present, offering the quiet support she desperately needed. When the tears finally stopped, Victoria made a decision. She would not let the world defeat her. She would not let fear steal her future. She would fight back, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. She returned to therapy the next morning. Recovery became painfully slow. Every inch gained required endless determination. Still, she refused to quit. She had found something worth fighting for, not just her career, but her dignity. And she had found someone worth fighting for too. Someone who had shown her that she was so much more than a wheelchair or a headline. Meanwhile, Nathan faced his own crisis. The landlord announced the apartment building would be demolished. Residents had 30 days to leave. Nathan couldn't afford another home nearby. He quietly searched for extra shifts while hiding the truth from Lily. She didn't understand why Daddy seemed so worried or why he stayed up late looking at classifieds. He told her everything would be fine, but he didn't believe it himself. The pressure mounted with each passing day. Nathan visited countless apartments, but every rental required deposits and references he couldn't provide. He considered sleeping in his truck while Lily stayed with a neighbor. He considered moving to a cheaper city and starting over. He considered breaking down and finally accepting charity from Victoria. But pride held him back. Victoria accidentally discovered his situation through a nurse who mentioned seeing Nathan looking at housing listings in the hospital lobby. She immediately understood the urgency. Nathan would never ask for help. He would rather starve than accept a handout. So she found another way. Without telling Nathan, she purchased the entire apartment building through an investment company. Instead of evicting tenants, she renovated every apartment and froze rent for struggling families. She created a rental assistance program that would help families like Nathan's permanently. Nathan never knew who had saved their home. He simply called it a miracle. When the landlord announced the demolition was cancelled and rent would actually decrease, Nathan wept with relief. He had been so close to losing everything. Now, somehow, his family had been given another chance. He thanked God, thanked the universe, and never suspected that Victoria was behind it all. Victoria never revealed her role in saving Nathan's home. She knew he would be uncomfortable with the knowledge. Instead, she simply enjoyed watching the peace return to his face. She felt a warmth inside her that no amount of money had ever provided. For the first time, she understood why Nathan gave so freely despite having so little. Giving wasn't about wealth. It was about love. And that realization transformed her forever. The friendship between Nathan and Victoria deepened in new ways. He shared his relief about the apartment. She pretended to be surprised. They continued meeting in the garden, sharing meals, and building something that looked suspiciously like a family. Lily adored Victoria and called her the nice lady with wheels. Victoria adored Lily and started designing children's books about disabilities to help kids understand differences. Life seemed to be improving for everyone. But the biggest challenge was still ahead. Victoria still had to confront the board, still had to prove her worth, and still had to find a way to save the company she had built. The battle was just beginning. But this time, she wouldn't fight alone. She had Nathan by her side, reminding her that she was stronger than she knew. Months later, Victoria finally returned to company headquarters. Board members stared as security opened the massive conference room doors. She entered confidently in her wheelchair, wearing a calm smile instead of fear. Many expected resignation. Instead, she delivered the most inspiring presentation of her career. She acknowledged her disability openly. She admitted her limitations honestly. Then she outlined a revolutionary business strategy focused on accessibility technology designed for millions living with disabilities worldwide. She spoke about her personal journey, the discrimination she had faced, and the massive market opportunity everyone else had ignored. She revealed prototypes for new products that would change lives, built from her own experience as a person with disabilities. The board sat in stunned silence. They had come expecting a defeated woman begging to keep her job. Instead, they found a visionary leader with a billion-dollar idea. Victoria explained that her paralysis had given her something precious: perspective. She now understood customers in a way no able-bodied CEO ever could. She could develop products that would revolutionize how people with disabilities lived, worked, and thrived. Her greatest weakness became the company's greatest innovation. The board voted unanimously to keep her as CEO. Investors applauded. Employees cried. News headlines transformed overnight. The woman everyone underestimated had just changed the future. Media coverage shifted from criticism to celebration. Analysts who had predicted her downfall now praised her resilience. Victoria had won, but she knew she hadn't done it alone. Nathan watched the announcement on a small television inside a neighborhood diner before beginning another shift. He smiled quietly. Not because a billionaire had succeeded. Because a wounded soul had remembered her worth. He remembered the dark hospital room, the wilted flowers, and the woman who had asked him to help her disappear. Now she was changing the world. And he had been part of that transformation. Victoria called Nathan immediately after the meeting. She was crying, laughing, and trembling all at once. She couldn't have done it without him. He had believed in her when nobody else did. He had reminded her of her strength when she had forgotten it existed. Nathan told her she had done it herself. He had only been there to open the curtains. But Victoria knew the truth. Nathan had done more than open curtains. He had opened her eyes. He had shown her that healing wasn't about returning to the person she used to be. It was about becoming the person she was always meant to become. And that person was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than she had ever imagined possible. The company launched Victoria's accessibility products to massive success. Sales exceeded projections. Customer feedback was overwhelming. Victoria had not only saved her company, she had transformed it. She became a symbol of resilience and innovation, appearing on magazine covers and giving speeches about disability rights. But she never forgot where her journey began. She never forgot the exhausted medic who had treated her like a person instead of a tragedy. Several weeks later, Victoria invited Nathan and Lily to the grand opening of the company's new Accessibility Innovation Center. Hundreds attended. Reporters crowded every entrance. Celebrities and politicians mingled with business leaders and activists. Everyone wanted to be associated with Victoria's success story. Instead of cutting the ceremonial ribbon herself, Victoria called Nathan and Lily onto the stage. Confused cameras followed. The crowd murmured uncertainly. Who were these ordinary people sharing the spotlight with a billionaire? Nathan hesitated, embarrassed by the attention. But Lily grabbed his hand and pulled him forward. She was too young to understand why anyone would be nervous about walking onto a stage. Victoria took a deep breath and began speaking. She revealed every breakthrough inside the building began with one exhausted single father who refused to treat a broken woman like she was broken beyond repair. She explained that compassion had accomplished what billions of dollars never could. She talked about the midnight transfer, the hospital chapel, the yellow daisy, and the friendship that had saved her life. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Nathan stood speechless while little Lily proudly squeezed his hand. The applause lasted several minutes. Many executives wiped tears from their eyes. Nathan couldn't speak. He had never expected recognition. He had never wanted it. He had simply done what he believed was right, treating a patient with dignity and kindness. Victoria didn't stop with praise. She announced a new foundation in Nathan's honor that would provide emergency medical training to underserved communities. She said it was a small way to repay the debt she owed to the man who had saved her life. Nathan shook his head, insisting he hadn't done anything special. But Victoria disagreed. She said saving someone's life wasn't always about performing CPR or administering medication. Sometimes it was about being present when someone needed someone the most. Lily was the real star of the event. She charmed reporters with her innocent questions and delighted the crowd with her enthusiasm. When asked what she thought of Victoria, Lily said the nice lady with wheels was her best friend. Victoria laughed and hugged her tightly. In a world filled with complicated relationships, Lily's simple affection was the most genuine thing Victoria had ever experienced. The grand opening was a triumph. But for Nathan, the best moment came afterward. He finally understood what Victoria had been trying to tell him all along. He had value. He mattered. His kindness had changed someone's life. And that knowledge was worth more than any paycheck or promotion. His wife would have been proud of him. Lily was certainly proud of him. That night, after everyone left, Victoria rolled onto the rooftop overlooking the city lights. Nathan joined her. Neither spoke immediately. The skyline glittered beneath a peaceful sky. Finally, Victoria admitted she no longer wished life had ended in that hospital room. Not because paralysis had become easier. Because someone had shown her that purpose survives even when dreams change. Nathan looked toward the stars, thinking of his late wife. Perhaps healing never meant replacing what was lost. Perhaps it meant learning to carry the grief while still making room for new joy. He told Victoria about his wife for the first time in detail. He shared their love story, her unexpected illness, and the devastating grief that followed. He talked about raising Lily alone and the constant fear that he wasn't doing enough. Victoria listened quietly. Then she shared something she had never told anyone. After the helicopter crash, she had tried to end her life. Her hospital room had been monitored, making it impossible. But she had planned to give up on her recovery and let herself fade away. Nathan's arrival had disrupted those plans. His unexpected kindness had given her a reason to live another day. And another. And another. Nathan was stunned. He had known she was struggling, but he had never realized the depth of her despair. He reached out and held her hand. She squeezed back. In that moment, no words were necessary. They simply sat together, two survivors sharing the silence under a canopy of stars. Victoria finally admitted her feelings. She told Nathan she loved him. Not as a friend, but as someone she couldn't imagine living without. She expected him to be shocked or uncomfortable. Instead, he smiled. He told her he loved her too. He had loved her since the moment she asked whether people could ever recover from losing everything. Her courage, her resilience, her refusal to give up, those qualities had captured his heart. They kissed for the first time under the moonlight. It was tender, hopeful, and slightly awkward. Neither of them was young and carefree anymore. They carried too much pain and responsibility for that. But they also carried something else, the knowledge that they had found something precious. A second chance at love. The night was perfect. But Victoria knew there was something she still had to confess. Something she had been hiding from Nathan for months. She took a deep breath and prepared to reveal the truth. Victoria finally confessed. She told Nathan about purchasing the apartment building, renovating the units, and freezing the rent. She explained that she had done it secretly because she knew he would never accept her help directly. She admitted she had been terrified of losing him if he found out. Nathan was silent for a long time. He stared at the city lights, processing her words. Part of him wanted to be angry. He had always valued his independence. The knowledge that Victoria had intervened felt like a violation of his privacy. But another part of him understood. She had acted out of love, not pity. She had seen him struggling and had found a way to help without hurting his pride. He finally turned to her and said he wasn't angry. He was grateful. He admitted that he had been close to breaking when the eviction notice arrived. He had considered giving up and accepting charity. Her intervention had given him something more valuable than a home. It had given him hope. Victoria apologized for keeping the secret. She promised never to make decisions about his life without consulting him again. Nathan accepted her apology and asked her to promise something in return. He asked her to trust him with her struggles, just as he trusted her with his. They were partners now. They needed to face challenges together. From that night forward, they shared everything. Nathan talked about his financial fears and parenting doubts. Victoria talked about her business pressures and ongoing health challenges. They supported each other through good days and bad, always reminding each other that they were stronger together than apart. Lily was thrilled when Nathan told her that Victoria would be spending more time with them. She had already started calling Victoria Auntie Vicky. Victoria embraced the role, attending school events, helping with homework, and teaching Lily about science and technology. She was becoming the mother figure Lily had lost years ago. The relationship deepened quickly. Victoria moved into a house with Nathan and Lily, creating a real home for the first time in years. The house had a garden where Lily could play, a workshop where Nathan could tinker, and plenty of space for Victoria to move around in her wheelchair. It wasn't a mansion, but it felt like a palace to all of them. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Nathan continued his emergency medical work, now with less financial stress and more purpose. Victoria continued leading her company, now with a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. Lily thrived with two parents who adored her and the stability she had desperately needed. Victoria's health continued to improve. She gained strength in her upper body and independence in her daily life. She traveled for business, gave motivational speeches, and advocated for disability rights. But she always returned home to Nathan and Lily, who reminded her why her work mattered. Nathan became a public figure in his own right. Victoria's foundation provided emergency medical training to underserved communities, and Nathan served as its director. He trained hundreds of medics, taught thousands of people CPR, and saved countless lives. His work became more meaningful than he had ever imagined possible. They married in a small ceremony in the hospital garden where their friendship had bloomed. Lily was the flower girl, scattering petals and laughing with joy. Victoria wore a simple dress and rolled down the aisle with tears streaming down her face. Nathan waited for her with his heart full and his eyes shining. In their vows, they promised to always remember that love was about showing up, not fixing each other. They promised to honor their scars as proof of survival. They promised to build a life based on honesty, respect, and endless support. It was the most beautiful moment of their lives. The years that followed were not without challenges. Victoria faced health setbacks. Nathan struggled with grief during holidays. Lily sometimes missed her birth mother. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from each other and the love they had built. Victoria often visited the rooftop where they had confessed their love. She would look at the stars and think about how close she had come to ending her story prematurely. If that midnight transfer had gone differently, if Nathan had been anyone else, her life would have ended in darkness. Instead, she had found light. Nathan continued working as a medic, even after Victoria offered to support them financially. He loved his work too much to give it up. He saved lives every day, just as he had saved Victoria. Each life he touched became a testament to the power of compassion. Years later, Victoria and Nathan stood together at the opening of the Victoria Langford Rehabilitation Center, a state-of-the-art facility serving people with disabilities. Lily, now a teenager, cut the ribbon with her parents watching proudly. She had grown into a compassionate young woman who volunteered at the center every weekend. The center was everything Victoria had dreamed of: accessible, welcoming, and innovative. It offered rehabilitation services, employment training, and mental health support. It was a place where people could heal, just as Victoria had healed. Her greatest achievement wasn't her company, it was giving others the chance to find hope again. Nathan continued his work as a medic and trainer, now overseeing the center's emergency response program. He had saved thousands of lives over the years, each one a testament to the power of compassion. He often shared his story at conferences and workshops, reminding audiences that kindness could heal wounds that money could never touch. Victoria wrote a best-selling memoir about her journey. The book had transformed her story into hope for millions. She spoke openly about her darkest moments, her desire to give up, and the unexpected friendship that had saved her. Readers around the world wrote to her, sharing their own stories of struggle and survival. Lily grew into a brilliant young woman who inherited her mother's business acumen and her father's compassion. She launched her own nonprofit focused on providing prosthetics to children in developing countries. Her parents couldn't have been prouder. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Nathan and Victoria returned to the hospital room where their journey had begun. The room had been renovated, but it still held the same view of the rain-covered window. Victoria looked at the spot where she had sat, alone and hopeless, and wept at the contrast. Nathan held her hand, just as he had held it years ago. They had come so far. From that sterile room of despair to a life filled with love and purpose. The journey had been painful, but it had been worth every tear, every setback, every fear. Victoria looked out the window and smiled. Rain was falling, just as it had on that fateful night. But this time, the rain didn't feel like tears. It felt like renewal. Like the world being washed clean for a new beginning. She turned to Nathan and said, "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Nathan kissed her forehead and replied, "You were always worth believing in. You just had to see it yourself." Their story is proof that even in our darkest moments, hope can find us. Sometimes it comes in the form of a stranger. Sometimes it comes in the form of a yellow daisy. Sometimes it comes in the form of a tired single father who refuses to give up on the person he sees in front of him. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories about second chances and unforgettable acts of compassion.